Hey there, Techians! Welcome to another video of our tutorial series in game development through Unity Game Engine. So for this Module 5, Part 5, I will be teaching you how to declare variables, how to use those declared variables in a function, how to call a function, how to make a set of arrays or how to declare an array, and how to use the if-else statement or conditional statement if-else. So if you're ready, let's start. So let's head over again to our scripts folder and open our script 1. Okay, opening in Visual Studio. It's taking too long. Alright, there we have it. So in the previous video, I taught you about the event functions in a class or in a script in Unity Game Engine through C#. Well, anyway, let's have first the declaration of variables. So in order for your code to simply work or to simply make a syntax and for you to add components, characteristics, and properties to your game objects in your project or in our project, we will be using a variable. So in order for you to make or declare a variable, we should know first the data types. So in our project, we will just be using we'll be using the int, float, and string. There are other data types as well in other programming languages. We have char, which stands for character. We also have, I don't think if we have we have double and many, but we won't be using these two. In declaring a variable, we don't just write the data types. So this data type int means integer. We can declare a value of numbers, while float is a data type wherein we can declare a value of numbers and numbers with decimal with decimal point, while string is a data type wherein we declare a name or a word. For me, I use the term word or a name since it uses characters of letters to form a word. You get the point. But it is not just limited to these data types. We can also declare variables using the different properties or some properties in the Unity game engine itself. We will be working on that under the later videos, but for this module, we'll just be focusing on declaring variables. Okay, let's erase that again. So the place or the proper placement of declaring a variables will be at this area. This one before the event functions void wake, void start, void update, or any functions that we will be making later on. So in order for us to do that, let's have the data type first. So the syntax of declaring a variable is the data type, then the name of the variable. Say for example, we would like to add speed in our character. So for speed, we measure it by number, or sometimes it's a quantitative data. So we're going to use int and the name of the variable speed. Let's specific what kind of speed: the bullet speed, the move speed, or let's say move speed. Then once you have the data type and the name of that variable, we will have its value. Say for example we have 10. Then in every line of code in C# we have to put this semicolon at the end right there, because if you don't put that symbol, it will be an error. It will appear here and expected assembly C# script 1 CS line 7 error. So we have to put there. So if we're going to read this code, we have a data type int and the variable name move speed, and we're going to store the value of 10 in that variable move speed. Okay, and next, for example, let's have the jump force. So let's declare that float. Since float is storing a value of a number and a decimal point, a number with a decimal point, for example, the jump force would be 2.5. That's the force how the character or the player will jump. So let's have the jump speed and the jump force. That's the name of the variable. And when going to store, since it is a float, we're going to store, for example, 2.3. And remember, when you're going to declare a variable or a data type with float, you're gonna have to put the value at the end of it with letter or lowercase letter f and the semicolon at the end. So there we have it. We have declared move speed variable as integer data type and the jump force variable as well. Now let's have the string. Let's have the string. Say for example, this is the power of the character. Then we're going to store. So in string, we're going to enclose it in a quotation mark, after double quote or quotation mark, whatever it is, and we're going to call, let's say, the power is fire, and the ending semicolon. So there we have it. We have declared variable. So what if you would like to customize the values of these variables, not in the script itself, but here in the Unity game engine, specifically here at the inspector panel. So let's do that. Let's add here a game object for the sake of this example. So let's have a circle. So we have the inspector circle and components of it, transform, sprite renderer. Then we're going to have to drag and drop the script, or we can just use the add component, go to scripts and select your active script. So we have it, script 1 is added to our circle game object. So as I've said, we want to customize or change the value of these declared variables here at the inspector panel. So whenever, for example, you hit the play button and you would like to try the movement speed of the character and it's too slow, you're not satisfied with it, and you're going to select the play button again to make it stop and revise the code. So that would be hassle. So to lessen that hassle, as I've said, we can change the value here at the inspector panel. So to do that, we're going to have to declare this variable into publicly access, or we're going to put an access modifier here, public. So the opposite to public, we have the private. So let's make it public. Now, so we have here a public variable, public with a data type int and the variable name move speed, and as a default it has a value of 10. Let's say you want to change it 15, but you don't want to go head over back to your code just to change it. So we will be seeing it right here. So let's hit the Ctrl S button. So remember, whenever you're altering or making changes in your code here in the Visual Studio, always hit the Ctrl S key, Ctrl Save key to make changes and apply it to your game or project. So once we hit Ctrl S, so never mind about this, it just means that the declared variables were never used. So if we're going to modify that, it will appear here. So as you can see, we have declared move speed variable and the default value is 10 as we have declared in our script. So say you hit the play button and you weren't satisfied with the 10, so you can just delete this one and make it 12 or 13. It's up to you, depending upon your preferences. So that's the public access modifier. We can also use the private. Well, actually, once you declare a variable without putting any access modifier before it, it is automatically considered as private or inaccessible. Public variables or function is not just accessible here in the game engine, it is also accessible in other scripts. You're just gonna have to get the class name, so on and so forth. We will not talk about that for this video, in this video rather. So what if you don't want it to be accessible in other scripts, but you want to edit it or to see it in the inspector panel? So what you're going to do, instead of writing public, you're gonna have to write serialize field. So even though it's not public, it will still be, it is still compiling. It will still be accessible in the inspector panel, however, it will not be accessible in other scripts. So that's it. That's how we declare variables, and these are the common variables that we will be using in our project. Next, we will be using this variable in some functions that we will be making. So unlike this event function that is a default in the Unity game engine, we will be making our own function. Let's say we want to have a function for the move speed of our player. Let's say you want to write there the codes or the instruction whenever the player moves. You want to compile it into one or a single pile of code. So we will be writing it, or we will be including it in a function. So in order to do that, we will write our function below these event functions: the void awake, void start, and void update. So the syntax of the function or a function is, first you will have to type the return type or return value of this function. For this time we will not be having a return value, so we just have to write void, meaning we will not return anything in a variable. So void, and the name of our function, let's say player move. Then in order for it to be considered as function, we will write these two or open and close parentheses. So let's write that one and a curly bracket. Without this curly bracket, we won't be, or the IDE won't be reading those codes, because whatever inside these curly brackets are the codes that will be read by your code editor or IDE. So let's have so that is the function. We have the player move function. We have the return type, which is void or none, and the name of the function. We can also put an access modifier before it, just like public and private. If you want it to be accessible in other scripts or other class, then you have to make it public. Making a function public cannot be modified or changed in the inspector panel, only the variables declared. So we have public void, or you can just write private. So there, private void, public. So in the player move, I just want to print in the console the value that we have declared for the move speed. This is just for the sake of an example, but in creating your game, you will be actually writing instruction here wherein you can make the player move, where you can make the player jump or shoot bullets or use its weapon. It depends. it depends on your preferences or the logic of your project. So I'm just going to print the value of move speed. So print, then the name of the variable move speed. So as you can see, the IDE automatically reads the possible variable functions or instances that can be placed within this print function, which is derived from this mono behavior and the namespaces of Unity. So move speed, then as I've said, every after the line of code we will be writing the semicolon. In function we don't put semicolon, instead we put the curly braces or brackets. So print move speed. So how do we call this function? Once we hit the play button, nothing will happen. Let's see. So if we hit the play button, and there you go. Well, there we have print 4. So let's call this function move speed. So player move. So I want this player move to be called here in the start event function. So in order to call that, you just have to copy this function name and the open and close parenthesis, then paste it here, or you can just retype it here in the start or in the update. And after at the end of it, we will write the semicolon. So hit Ctrl S to save the changes of the changes in your code. And let's go back to Unity. It's still compiling. So don't worry about that. It's just that some of the variables were not used in our code. So let's hit the play button. So yeah, there we have it. The value of the move speed was printed inside the console because we used the print function, and the value that we put in the inspector panel, since the move speed is a public variable and we put 4, the 4 will be printed in the console. Let's say we change it to 10. So if you change it to 10, the value of 10 should be printed here in the console. Still compiling. Okay, there you have it. So that is how you call a function, and when you call a function in the start, it only happens once. It happens as the game initializes or starts. But what if we put it on the event function, update event function rather? So let's say cut that and Ctrl V here, player move, and hit Ctrl S. So let's see. From this point, you will be able to understand the difference between the start and the update function by application. Unlike in the other video, the previous video that I discussed the start and event function, I just define it technically. So this time you'll be able to differentiate the two. So now the function will be called on the update event. So once we hit the play button, okay, as you can see, it keeps on printing as long as or until the game ends or until the game is paused or stopped. This will stop printing. So that is the update event function, wherein any instruction or code or function instances written inside it will be called every frame. So it's already 999 and above. So let's hit this. So there you have it. It was printed 999. I don't know, maybe. So that's the difference between the start and update. So there we have it. We were able to make a function. You just have to write the return type So since we're not going to return any value, we just have to write void and the name of the function plus open and close parentheses and these curly braces. And optional, this is only optional, but it depends. If you want it to be accessible in other scripts, you just have to write a access modifier public, and if you don't want or otherwise, you just have to write private or don't write it at all. So that is how we make or create function. Let's make another example. Let's say we want to print the value of power. So let's just make again void. We're not going to return any value. Void print power. Then open and close parentheses. Then the curly braces. So use the function print. Then the name of the variable power of close parentheses and the semicolon. So we just so after that we will copy the name of the function for it to be called. So control copy or control C. Let's say we want to call it on the update again. So we have power and the end of the line of the code semicolon. Hit Control S since we made a change in our code. Okay, let's hit the play button and it should print fire since the value of power in our declared variable is fire. So there you have it. It keeps on printing every frame because it is in the update event function. It prints fire, 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 and fire. So that is how we make our function and call a function. Next, I'll be teaching you how to make an array. For example, you want to spawn several game objects and you want to store it in a single variable. So as we can see here, variable can only store one unit. For example, integer move speed, so it only stores one unit of value. But in array, we can make integer, or if we want to use the integer any data type, we can store multiple values in it. So let's head over there. First, let us define first array, or what is an array. So array is a type of variable wherein we can store multiple value. For example, you have a player wherein it has multiple abilities, and you want to store that abilities into one set of variable, so that whenever you make a function or make instruction in it, you will just call or use that variable. So in order for you to make an array, just like in variable, just type the data type. For this example, let's say I want to use the data type float and the number of abilities. I almost forgot, since we are making an array. After you write a data type, you will have to write these brackets, meaning this float will be a type, or this variable data type will be an array and not just a single variable. So float, and let's say for example the abilities of our player, number of ability, that's too long. Power number, let's say power number, or ability number, let's say AB number. Then hit equal and new float and the bracket again, and inside this bracket we will be putting how many value, or how many value are we going to store in this float array or AB number array. So for instance, we will give the player 3 abilities, so let's just write 3, and after that at the end a semicolon. So there, we have just declared an array. So first, you just have to write the data type and this bracket to signify it that this data type will be an array or it will store multiple values in it. And the name of that array, just like in variable, you just have to write a name related to its function. If it's going to be an ability, so just write ability number, or it depends on you. Then equals new, and the type, the data type again. And inside the data type, after the data type, we will be writing this bracket, and inside it is the number or the number of values that we will be storing in this array AB num. So that is how we manually declare or use array. Actually, we can manipulate or change this again in the inspector panel, and doing that will be much more easier. But I will be showing you first the difficult ones, or the basis. So inside here, the awake, since this is called before the start, and start is called the initialization of the game, and after that the update. So in the awake, I will be setting this AB number, the number of variables. So since we are using float type variable, and it stores a value of a number and number with decimal, or decimal point, you get my point. point, yeah. Anyway, so we will write the array name, or the name of the array, AB number, bracket. Then since we are going to store 3 values, the arrangement, take note of this, the arrangement of an array starts with 0. So if you have 3, then it will you will have an array or number of arrays starting from 0, 1, and 2. So let's start from 0. So 0 is equal to, it's a float variable, so we will, for example, 1.2f and semicolon, AB number, AB number, bracket 1 is equal to 1.3f, and AB number 2, not 20, is equal to 1.4f. So there we have it. We have just stored 3 values in our array AB number. So for example, game object, not a float type variable, game object, you want to store different color objects that you will spawn in your game. So you can use the array instead of using a single variable. So you could just have to write the data type and the name of that array, and equals new, and the data type again. And inside it, you will write how many values are you going to store in that array. So that is how we manually set and store value in an array. So let's use the function again, print. Before that, let's comment this out. We will not be using this one, and this one, and also this one. Comment this out. Yep. Okay. Okay, wait, something's wrong. Oh no. Okay. We won't be calling that function. So let's say we want to see or print the value of the first array. The first array will be this one, 0. As I've said, array, the ranges of array starts from 0 and until it reaches the value that you set in your declaration. So let's say I want to print AB number 0. So we have there AB number 0. So we'll be expecting that in the console we will be seeing 1.2f once, since we have just called it in the start event function. So hit Ctrl S, And let's see, let's head over to Unity. It's still compiling. Okay, let's see the clear button. And let's see, it should print 1.2, not 1.2, 1.2. So yeah, there we have it. We print the value stored in the array AB number 0. So you can just copy this one if you want to try the AB number or the stored value in the second array and also in the third array. So as the code or as the game initializes, it will read first here the void awake, the stored value in the array that we have just made, and read the code in the start. It will start from here. So expectedly we'll be seeing in our console the 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 value respectively. So let's see that. So compiling. Let's hit the clear button and so there we have it. The arrays for the first array, second, and the third array, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, as we just have written in our code. So next, I'll be showing you how to change the value change the value of array in our inspector panel. To do that, we will be using we will be declaring a data type game object. So as we have just discussed in the previous videos, declaring variables is not just limited to these major data types. We can also declare variables using the properties and some of the data types here inside the Unity game engine. So let's go back to our Visual Studio. We're going to make an array of game object. So in order for you to declare game object, just type game object and select here suggest the IDE suggested functions and brackets. For example, colored balls. So we're going to store multiple game objects in the colored balls array. Equals new game object, and let's say we're going to store 3. But what if we just we want to do it easily, more conveniently? So we won't be writing this equals new game object. Instead, we will have its access modifier public. So public game object array and colored balls. So I don't want to do. Let's just put this code as is. Anyway, it will just be printed in the console. So we have public game object array name colored balls. So let's hit Ctrl S and head over back to Unity. Okay, let's clear this one out. So as you can see here, the array that we just have declared in our code now appears in the inspector panel, and it's named colored balls. So what about this one? So this one is just the same as this. The number of values that we are going to store in that array. So instead of writing the code here manually, you can just do it or declare it as public, and then the array or the data type and its name, and it will appear in the okay, I selected the wrong. What are we going to do with Adobe? But we're not going to use that. So it will appear, I'm sorry about that, it will appear in the inspector panel, and you're just gonna have to type depending on how many values that you want to make or store in the array. So let's say, for example, we want to store 3 game objects. So once you hit that and you click this arrow button here, we have the element 0, 1, 2. So as I've said, the object arrangement or the arrangement of array always starts with 0. So as you can see here, it is the element 0, element 1, element 2. This is just the same with this one. 0, 1, and 2. So how do we store game objects in that in an array, or maybe in even a variable? So to do that, let's have here another game object. Let's say for example, so since it is a ball, and this game that we're going to make is 2D, so let's just have the circle. Okay, we already have the circle, we can just have duplicated this one. So let's rename this one ball 1 and duplicate, rename ball 2 and rename, not rename, duplicate, rename ball 3. So in order for you to reference or store a value in a publicly declared variable or array, just select the game object wherein the script is attached and the array that is declared. So you just have to drag or click this button here and see the possible game objects that you can store in. That I'm not used to doing that. I used to dragging the game objects in it. For example, in the element 0, the ball 1, you have it, ball 2, and ball 3. So there we have it. We just stored 3 game objects in the colored balls array. So what is the use of that? So it depends on the instruction or what kind of action that we'll be implementing in the colored balls or using the colored balls array. So let's have some example. Say for example you want to spawn one ball in your scene or in your project. So let's have here in the player move, or let's make another function, not player move. Print out here, click this one. Let's say we have void, since we are not going to return any value, void spawn colored ball, and then open and close parentheses and the curly brackets. So for example, we want to instantiate, and I've said it already, we want to spawn a game object in our scene. So I'll be teaching this in advance, but in the later videos or in the next videos, I'll still be teaching this function we call instantiate. So instantiate is Unity Game Engine function wherein clones the object original and returns the clone. So in layman's term, we just spawn any stored value, or usually I use this instantiate to store game objects, especially sometimes enemy or power-ups, or just like in the game that we will be making, the letters falling from random position. I use instantiate function there. So let's have instantiate colored ball, and I want to instantiate the colored ball element, this one, ball 1, so 0. So colored ball, since colored ball is an array, we always include this bracket, then until spawn 0, then comma. So in instantiate function, the syntax of it is the function name instantiate, open parenthesis, and the object that you want to instantiate, and next, where do you want the object to be instantiated? So I will put here game object, let's say transform that position, and the rotation type, we're not going to apply any rotation, so we just have to type quaternion dot identity. So colored balls, sorry, colored balls. So this is the instantiate function. We will be using this in our game as we set up the project. So instantiate, the name of the function, then the game object that we will be instantiating or spawning. Next, we will be writing comma, the position we are going to spawn that object, and the rotation type. Since we're not going to use any or apply any rotation, we just have to write quaternion identity. So let's hit Ctrl S and let's see what will happen. So ball 1, ball 2, ball 2, let's move this one, ball 3, the ball 1, so let's see. Okay, so the ball 1 instantiated in its position. Let's have a better example for that. I guess I have miswritten a code. It shouldn't happen like that. Oh, I see. I forgot to declare another variable for the position, not only transform that position. So we have to declare another game object, only a variable. Let's make it public so it is accessible in the inspector panel. Public game object and ball pose or ball position, where this is where we are going to instantiate the colored ball. Oh, not game object, I'm sorry. Public transform. Yep, that's the term. Public transform. So we have again another introduce data type, transform. This only return a value or store a value of a position of an object, position X, Y, or Z. So public transform ball pose. So in our game engine or in the scene, we're gonna have to make another empty game object. Create empty, and let's just move it here. So the ball should instantiate at this position. So the ball 1, and where's the game object, and circle. So we have here, oh, we haven't hit the Ctrl S button. So as we go back to the game object where the script is attached, we should be seeing there, yeah, the ball pose transform as we have declared here in our script. Since it is public, now we can access it in this inspector panel. So we just have to drag the position of the game object that the ball will be spawning. So this is the game object that we just made. So drag it there. So automatically it will read or store its position, and its position is in here. So expectedly, we should thus ball 1 should be instantiated or spawn at this position. Let's have a color. Let's give this circle a color so that we can identify that it is the ball 1. Okay, let's say for example purple. Let's see. Okay, nothing happens. What seems to be wrong? I don't worry, I'm not confused. It's just we're missing something here. Ah, okay, again. The prefabs. So anyway, I guess I'm diving too much into concepts which I should not be teaching yet in this video. So that's it. That's how we store. Let's just pause for there, since some of the topics that I have been discussing for a minute should be discussed in the next videos, not here. And this will, I think, or I guess, overload your learning capabilities, and I don't want that. So that is how we declare or store multiple variables in a single data type, and that is what we call array. So for the next video, I'll be teaching you the conditional function or conditional statements in Unity, the if-else statements.